Hey friends, how's it going? Ash here, welcome back to Gents. Hope that you're doing well. It's time to go over number 20 through number 11 for the best-selling men's fragrances in the United States for 2023. So this is part 2 of a 3-part video series. In the first video, I went over number 30 through number 21. So if you haven't seen that video, check that one out first. But today, we're doing the middle ground, 20 through 11. In the next video, the top 10. So I'm gonna be sharing with you guys a lot of information here that typically is not shared, frankly. This is information that every major fragrance house, every major flavoring house has, but typically your average person doesn't have access to until now. So I'm gonna be giving you guys the sales numbers for these fragrances. I'm gonna be giving you their volume ranking, so how many units were sold, and also their value ranking, so how much the actual value was of those units that were sold. And I'll give you the overall sales numbers as well. So just a lot of info, and I'll tell you whether or not it improved or actually got worse year over year for each fragrance that we talk about. So I'll have each fragrance that I talk about here today linked in the description below. Before we jump into the first fragrance, here are some codes you can use if you would like to, if you shop at any of these fine websites. The newest code is, of course, the FragFlex code GS25, which will get you buy one, get one 25% off, and that does scale up. So the more bottles you buy, the more that you would get 25% off. All right, are we ready? Let's do it. The number 20 best-selling men's fragrance in the United States for 2023, Born in Roma Intense by Valentino, which this is one that I like a lot. Really enjoy this one. And it was ranked 20th in terms of the overall value, but down at 31st in terms of volume. So it didn't move quite as many units as some of the other fragrances that we'll talk about, but the overall value of those units moved was higher. So 20th in terms of value, but 31st in terms of volume. This one moved $14.25 million worth of product. And it was a new release as well. So you have to factor that in because this one did not have an entire full year like some of the other fragrances that we're going to talk about. Though to be fair, it did come out earlier on in the year, so it had close to a full year, but not quite. And the overall market share for this one was 0.96%. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but that means that this fragrance accounted for nearly 1% of the sales of men's fragrances in the US. So again, this one I absolutely love, and I'm glad to see it doing really well. I do need to point out one caveat, just like with the first part of this series. These sales numbers are from Q1 through Q3, so the end of Q3. It does not include Q4, and that's because as of when I'm filming this, it's the beginning of January. So those Q4 numbers are not available yet. If I get those down the road, I'll do an update video where I give you guys the final numbers for everything, but this lets you know how everything was shaking out through the first 9 months of 2023. So do keep that in mind because some of these fragrances, like myself in the last part, definitely moved up, I would imagine, when you factor in Q4. But at the end of September, the very end of September, this is where everything stood. All right, number 19 is from Ralph Lauren. It is Polo Blue, the OG, still getting it done. Number 19 in value, but number 16 in volume, which when you think about it, that makes sense because it's still selling really well. It's still selling a whole bunch of units, but where it's been out for a while and it's from Ralph Lauren, you know, it's not a Dior or a Chanel or something. It's gonna be selling for a little bit less at a lot of places, which means that volume being higher than the value makes sense. So this one, 14.63 million is what you're looking at as far as the overall sales numbers of this one through the end of the third quarter. So I gotta be honest with you guys here, Polo Blue, the OG, not a massive fan personally. I know a lot of you out there are obviously looking at the numbers of this thing, but yeah, I don't love it. A lot of the flankers that have come out after it, I think are really good, but the OG, not quite as much for me. It doesn't really do it for me. And I alluded to this in my previous part of this series when I did 30 through 21. There are a bunch of fragrances out there, and I think Polo Blue is one of them, that really benefit from being huge when they came out. And then a lot of people that were buying fragrances at that time loved it. And so as time goes on, they'll wear a bottle, buy a new one, wear a bottle, buy a new one. And so you have this constant kind of like, this constant revenue stream of people re-upping a fragrance that they fell in love with years ago. So for me, that fragrance would be Acqua di Gio, the original Acqua di Gio. Had I not gotten into collecting and everything, I would just be buying more and more of that, right? So kind of got that going on here. And this one accounted for 0.99% of the market, and that's actually down from last year. It's actually down by about 0.15%. So it dropped off a little bit year over year, but still obviously doing really well. Number 18 is Paco Rabanne's 1 million Elixir, actually 35th in terms of volume. So a decent gap there, a little bit similar to the Valentino over here. And this one was basically right at 14.8 million. Technically it was like 14.796 million, but it's round up to like 14.8. I think that's pretty safe to do there. That accounted for right at 1%. So obviously if you go down further decimal points, it's not an exact 1%, but doing it to the second decimal point, 1% of the market share. And that is an increase over 2022. Though if memory serves, this was a 2022 release, so didn't have a full year of 2022. And when we're doing these comparisons, I should say, the year over year increase or decrease, it is being compared to the same time frame. So Q1 through Q3 of 2022 versus 2023. Just to put that out there, you know, it's not the full year of 22 versus just 3 quarters in 23 when that comparison is being done. So 1 million Elixir, I gotta say, pretty successful. I mean, it's a top 20 release. The volume, you know, is a little bit lower than some of the others, but they're making up for that in terms of cost. And obviously, with that doing well after the first year and increasing year over year, again, came out in 22, so it didn't have that full stretch of 3 quarters, but to have it perform really well 2 years in a row means that this one probably has some staying power to it, and you could see this stick around for a while. Number 17, YSL Y Le Parfum, but the volume on this one, 45th. Yeah, so this one, an even bigger gap. Obviously, Y Le Parfum, very costly on a per bottle basis compared to just about everything else in the top 30. 15.29 million, the overall value on sales for this one through the first 3 quarters, and it did actually decrease year over year. So from 2022 to 2023, the overall market share for Y Le Parfum went down. It's at 1.03% for 2023 through the first 3 quarters, but it was 1.18 in 2022. So pretty decent drop. I know 0.15% doesn't sound huge, but when you're considering that it's just one single fragrance, and that one single fragrance's place in the entire market, the thousands of fragrances out there, pretty substantial. Still though, it is a top 20 fragrance, even if the volume is a top 50 fragrance. Again, it's quite pricey per bottle, and that is reflected here. I myself really like Y Le Parfum. I find it to be a nice little tweak on the Y DNA, a little bit classier while still maintaining that essence of what makes Y. You know, it's like a little bit more of a mature take on YEDP almost. That's dumbing it down, but you get the idea. Also want to do a really quick shameless self-promotion for my fragrances over here, Edgewater and West Loop, the 2 new ones. They're at every Perfumania and every fragrance outlet store in the United States. So if you've got one nearby, stop in, check those out. And you can also order those online at Michael Malloy's website, which is linked down below. The code GENTSENSE will save you some money on your order. And if you don't want to buy a full bottle, you can get one of these little travel sizes, 15 mils, a lot cheaper, so you can check out the fragrances that way. No, none of mine made the top 30. Number 16 is Coach for Men. Yes, Coach for Men, crushing it. And that one is 14 in terms of volume, so it is pushing bottles. That is just selling a lot of units, a couple of spots above even Polo Blue over here. And when I did this video last year for the best sellers of the previous year for 2022, Coach for Men was a surprise to me because I had never seen those numbers before, like the actual real deal numbers. And so seeing it for the first time, Coach really jumped out at me because I had never thought of this one as competing with the big dogs, you know, being a top 15 bestseller in the entire country. I had never thought of this that way, and it is. Technically, it's number 16 for 2023, but you get the idea. 16.81 million. That is the number of sales for Coach through the first 3 quarters of 23. That is 1.13% of the market share in general, and that is actually up from the previous year by 0.11%. So Coach for Men, still yet, came out in 2017, I believe. That is still improving year over year. Crazy. But it makes sense when you think about it because it's not that expensive compared to a lot of other fragrances. I mean, this one was 45th in terms of volume and was just about the same amount of overall sales as Coach, which was number 14 in terms of volume. So yeah, it's way more affordable than a lot of other designer fragrances out there. It has a name that people recognize, Coach. It's got a nice presentation. It looks good. It doesn't look cheap at all. When you smell it, it's easily digested, right? It's an easy wearing, versatile blue fragrance that's gonna get you compliments, get you attention. You don't have to think about it, you know, it's not divisive. So it makes sense when you think about it. It's affordable from a name that people know and a presentation that looks good, and the type of fragrance that it is really the type of fragrance a lot of people go for, so yeah. Number 15 is also number 15 in volume, so 15 in value and volume both. It's Luna Rossa Ocean from Prada. 16.9 million for this one. This one's a little bit interesting because for a lot of people when they think Prada, as far as men's fragrances, they think Prada L'Homme, or maybe Prada Luna Rossa Carbon, or even Luna Rossa Black. But as it stands today, the king of Prada fragrances for men is this one. Miniature spoiler, but Prada L'Homme, not in the top 30. Luna Rossa Carbon, not in the top 30. Luna Rossa Black, not in the top 30. This one, top 15. This is at 1.14% of the market share, and it actually increased year over year, and not an insubstantial amount. Actually, year over year, Luna Rossa Ocean had the biggest increase in terms of sales of any of the other fragrances that we're gonna talk about. So that's good news for Prada. It is trending up, but that may make it where we get more stuff like this from Prada, for better or worse. Like I said a few times in the previous video, we'll have to wait and see, but the proof is in the sales, I guess, for this one for them. Number 14, which was number 19 in volume, Acqua di Gio Profondo. Yeah, I like seeing that there. That's my guy. So yeah, Acqua di Gio Profondo is my dude. This is my favorite Acqua di Gio right now, and I saw today, as of when I'm filming this, that an Acqua di Gio Profondo limited edition eau de parfum was announced, which makes me happy because that means I think he's safe for a while longer, and seeing it doing well in sales, I mean, yeah, good job, bud. Acqua di Gio eau de parfum, Acqua di Gio parfum. No, but Profondo still doing well. 17.37 million for Profondo, really strong number, but it did actually decrease year over year as far as its overall percentage of the market, which is sitting at 1.17 through the first 3 quarters of 23, which was actually a pretty decent drop. Yeah, so there's that. But still a top 15 bestseller, so who cares about that stuff? It's still doing good. Number 13 is actually number 7 in terms of volume, and it's light blue pour homme for men, just the original light blue. Now, I can sit here and whine and get on my soapbox and say, why would you buy that one? Get Oh Intense, or get Italian Love, or get Summer Vibes, or get whatever, your flanker of choice, right? But proof is in the pudding. This is the bestseller, at least in the light blue line, and it ain't close. So number 7 in volume tells you once again, like a couple of these others here, that it's moving a ton of units, but just not at as high a cost as some of these other ones, which makes sense. Light blue is one of those fragrances that you can often find marked down, even in retail stores and stuff like that. You know, it's not one that you have to go really search out online to find it. It's readily available, and oftentimes it's not quite as expensive. And this one's a nice little bump up from where Profondo was as far as overall sales numbers, 19.61 million bucks for light blue. So obviously, once you factor in the fourth quarter, when that info comes in, it's going to easily be over 20 million. So not a bad year, especially for a fragrance that's been out for as long as this has. And year over year, it increased 1.32%. Yeah, light blue, more people are buying than ever, apparently. So Dolce & Gabbana light blue just crushing it. Good job, guy. We're in the final couple of fragrances here, and then in the next one, we'll do the top 10. Number 12 is Valentino Uomo, Born in Roma. Yeah, so they got Born in Roma Intense over here, and then the original Born in Roma just outside the top 10, which you can think what you think about Valentino changing the direction of the Uomo line and moving it into the Born in Roma line direction. But this tells you why they did it, right? Now, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I personally like Born in Roma more than the original Valentino Uomo or Uomo Intense, because I don't. I do like Born in Roma Intense a whole bunch, but yeah, this is not really something I love. But would I recommend it to younger guys looking for a very versatile scent that's gonna pull you positive attention, that's going to have good performance, all that stuff? Absolutely. And Born in Roma is just doing really well overall. 12 in terms of value, 13 in terms of volume. Any company out there would love to have a release doing that. 20.65 million is the overall number for that one in terms of the sales. And that is actually a pretty good increase year over year, 1.39%. And that is a 0.2% increase year over year. So Born in Roma is just doing better than ever. And I think this one coming out, Intense, and being accepted really well, people going for that one is just gonna help strengthen both of them. So number 12, Born in Roma. Number 11 is 1 million. So yeah, out of the 10 here from 20 to 11, 2 1 millions and 2 Born in Romas. Number 11 in terms of value, number 8 in terms of volume. So this one actually is really close to light blue, just in terms of both volume and value. These two are kind of linked as far as their sales numbers go here, which in my mind, you could almost put these together, right? Because both of these are considered nowadays kind of a modern classic, I think you could pretty comfortably say. So like this one for spring and summer, that one for fall and winter, both of them modern classics that sell like crazy and you can find sometimes discounted pretty decently. Yeah, it makes sense, at least in my head. Now, one thing you're gonna notice here is there's a pretty big jump between this and that as far as how much they made. As you get into the top 10, it gets a lot bigger. So this one is 25.96 million. It's like 5 million more than Born in Roma. So that's 1.75% of the market, which actually is down from 2022 by like 0.2%. So whereas Born in Roma is heading up, this one was heading down. Now, of course, a lot of this can just be fluctuations year over year, especially when you're talking about, stuff like this that's been around forever. So yeah, it moved down as far as its overall percentage of market share, but it doesn't mean like 1 million's going anywhere anytime soon, right? So 1 million, just barely outside the top 10.
And now it's time to think what the top 10 could be. Oh, what could it be?
I'm just playing, you guys. You probably got a pretty good idea, right? Right? At least some of them. I'll also do a video going over the top 10 fragrances by volume, because there are some fragrances that were in the top 10 by volume that weren't even in the top 30 in terms of value. But for now, this is part 2, number 20 through number 11. In the next one, we're doing the top 10. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there. I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys later.